John Hayes to make his valedictory statement.
Mr. Speaker, this afternoon I come to say farewell and to share a few final thoughts with you, my colleagues, and the Wairarapa community. But first I want to thank the Wairarapa, Taurua and Central Hawke's Bay communities who for 3 times elected me as their representative, each time by a greater margin. It's been a privilege to have represented the people of the Wairarapa for 9 years. It actually feels like 9 long years. It's been an experience that few of us get. No one arrives here as an electorate MP without the support of many people, too many to name. Some of them are here today. Thank you for coming. I particularly want to acknowledge the late John Falloon and the late Juliet Hensley. You departed too soon, and I'd never have made it here without your support. John and Helen McFadgen, Sue Perry, Snow, and Di Peterson from Waipak, Bernard Cleary, my kneecapper in Carterton, Keith Hancox in Marston, and Richard Ellis in Paiatua, Alistair Plymouth, Stephen Kerr, and many, many others, including my Emily, Nev, Corin and Louis up in Kunya, up in Kuwait, and Matthew Louise and Edward and James Hayes, and especially Helen, who has carried the brunt of long absences and my distractions. They've tolerated, not approved of my being here. And an MP is not a job. It's an all-consuming life. And constituents deserve no less. I'm deeply indebted to Yvonne Payne in my Masterton office for 9 long years, and to Janet Castell in Waipak, Rebecca Algie and Maureen Fenimore in Dannevirke, and the wonderful Emily Broadmoor here in Parliament. And there are many others like Paul, Jane and Mike at InStyle, Lou and Fiona at Capital Travel, and AJ at Lambs Peters Print in Greytown, who consistently made the impossible possible. Stan and the late Nola Mangan have been superb neighbours who, without any fuss, covered all those things I was never around to fix, like the cows jumping the fence. Thank you. I wouldn't have survived here without your support. And I need to apologise to the crew of the Maranui, Captain Povey, Doug, Mike and Andrew, for never being around when you were short of crew. 9 years have passed really quickly, almost a quarter of a working life. It's been an interesting time. My friend and sounding board John Snellenberg told me in 2005 I would develop a carapace. I'd never heard the word. But I can say now, Snell, you were right. Politicians need a tough outer shell. Mine formed pretty quickly when Michael Cullen whacked Finlayson and I around this chamber one afternoon. I guess Parliament reflects our collective character and personality as a country. And I'm no saint. No, I'm not, Mallard. Much of my first term here was spent reflecting on why I'd come. The atmosphere was toxic, not helped by a speaker who was shrill and screamed, and loopy committee chairs, Pettis and Yates. Visits to parliaments in Denmark and Sweden showed that parliamentary debate can be respectful, focused on issues, and without narcissistic tone. Better behaviour and debate might encourage more members of the community coming here and making a contribution. Might also arrest the declining numbers of people who are voting. I brooded about our inability as a society to be more generous of spirit and accepting when people get something wrong. The media especially fall over themselves to beat up on anybody who buggers up. That's a Papua New Guinean word. So what, you say? Well, I think the what is the question. Why would anybody expose themselves to public life when the risk of a mistake becomes public pillorying, which inevitably follows? We collectively pay a price in not creating an environment conducive to attracting more good leaders to Parliament. We could move our country forward further and faster by focusing on what's important. We bog down arguing with each other. For more than 10 years, the Wairarapa electorate has been trying to progress a couple of irrigation schemes. It's a simple task to collect and store water that falls at the wrong time of the year, and then to use it in the summer drought. But very little progress has been made. Why? Is it leadership that's wanting? Yep, sometimes. Are RMA requirements a constraint? Yep. Are Maori demands a constraint? Sometimes they can be. Are NIMBY issues the problem? Yes. Well, let's be upfront and be clear that affected landowners will be fairly compensated for their land and their disruption. Irrigation is the quickest way to grow our national income, and the whole country wins. It's difficult to fathom why simple, sensible, straightforward concepts have become so difficult to implement. Were I New Zealand's next Prime Minister, I would ensure that the next Parliament got rid of a plethora of unnecessary legislation and excessive regulation. 3 years isn't long enough. This year's election is going to cost the taxpayers $27 million, together with the time they've invested in MPs who are going to be distracted by parliamentary campaigning. Were I Prime Minister, and don't laugh, Brendan, it's not too late to nominate, I would promote a 4 or 5 year term to spread the cost over more years. Doing so would give Parliament a more reasonable time to implement its programs. Colleagues from across the House, and Cam's just said it tonight, Parliament provides a wonderful experience. Having spent time here and in the Foreign Ministry, my curiosity is satisfied. To those contemplating a political career, I'll say two things. If you've got kids, don't come near the place because they're going to be shortchanged. And if you want a really fascinating job, head to the Foreign Ministry. The big advantage, there's no election every 3 years. And besides, foreign ministers come and they go. Constituent work is rewarding. Few beyond the Beltway understand how government works, and that's where I've tried to add value. The Labour candidate in the Wairarapa dropped a leaflet in my letterbox the other day proclaiming that he should be my Member of Parliament because he'd been compere at the Golden Shears competition this year. I've no doubt that requires some requires some skill, but not the sort that's going to make him a competent Member of Parliament, and I doubt the community will elect a candidate who has so little experience and expertise. People who live and work in cities assume provinces work like the cities they live in. They don't. Much of my time has been spent bridging that gap. I've often felt like a scribe in an Indian bazaar drafting letters for people. But there is a satisfaction from securing good outcomes and seeing common sense prevail. The campaign to keep Makora College from closing in 2006 was a tough battle for an opposition MP. But the outcome, keeping the school open, was a victory for the Masterton community. That issue taught me the critical importance of school leadership. It's great to see the school's role today in a very different place to the projections of ministry officials who used to walk up my drive on a Sunday morning to beat me up. Officials, the same officials who wanted to close the school rather than address 6 years of ERO reports pointing out dysfunctional relationships at senior levels in the school. I acknowledge and congratulate Makora's outstanding principal, Tom Hulina. He's more than doubled the school roll, topped the country's NCEA results, and in the last 6 weeks received the Prime Minister's recognition for excellence in leading, an Atakura Award here last month. The resident status of many Pacific families is a concern. Too many Pacifica people have irregular immigration status. They make no demands on social welfare. I see them in my electorate, but they live in fear. Their children don't easily sit in school, and they don't access healthcare. These families are often desperate. They're vulnerable to being ripped off by unscrupulous lawyers and others who charge fees and deliver no results for them. It's a large but hidden problem, and I urge Pacifica people to get appointments with your MPs after the election, because they can help you regularise your status without charge. When constituents have sought help, my drive has been a simple test. Is it fair? When the answer was no, then I've always gone into bat. In provincial New Zealand, interpersonal issues are held much more intensely than in our big towns. People are inclined to stop talking to each other. If they only would talk to each other, most problems would dissipate. The impact of the Horizon Council's One Plan, proposed for the Tararua a couple of years ago, would have removed $62 million each year from the local economy in the Tararua area. Bringing people to Parliament for a meal, a libation in my office afterwards, was a formula that generally got people talking to each other. They then took responsibility and established frameworks for sorting out their problems. They got to common sense outcomes. I think that economic and social progress in provincial New Zealand will only happen if we who live in provincial areas take responsibility for our own affairs. No one owes us a living. Those who think, and I'm talking Wairarapa at the moment, those who think Wellington-based ratepayers are going to subsidise activity in the Wairarapa are at best misguided. They do not live on my planet. No one owes us a living. Air New Zealand demonstrated that a couple of years ago when they ended the air link to Auckland. That's why I've worked so hard with others to secure the restoration of a financially sustainable air service between Masterton and Auckland. 18 people came to a meeting on Monday at Masterton's Town Hall, and as we speak, contributions are now being put into a trust account held by accountants Amy Kerr and Associates. Subject to an undertaking to improve the runway, I'm confident an air service based on an Air Chatham's Metroliner with Wairarapa livery will resume in September. It's not possible to win every issue. I spent a year trying to advance a plan to turn Masterton's old hospital into an integrated family health centre. At the time, the recession was in full swing and the proposal offered 70 immediate jobs and about 50 full-time positions when completed. 2 letters from Maori asked for the site to go into the land bank. Despite an assurance from a colleague, Peter Sharple's clout was greater than mine, and the building went into the land bank. After Opus evaluation, a local Maori leader told me 4 months later they no longer wanted the complex. I have always stood the ground for Maori on issues like the seabed and foreshore and treaty settlements, and I'd suggest, though, that Maori could well reflect carefully on their actions if they want to carry the support of most Kiwis into the future. A growing number of Wairarapa people are keen to see an end to the grievance industry, the end of Maori seats and the coming together of all Kiwis. I support the Prime Minister's call for consultation about a new flag. When treaty settlements are completed, moving forward may help strengthen our nationhood. Finally, a couple of things about foreign affairs. I was always pleased in the last Parliament to complete a Foreign Affairs Committee inquiry into New Zealand's relationship with the South Pacific. The government did not have a majority on the committee, and the report had more than 40 recommendations unanimously supported by all parties. This led to our being able to host the first ever Pacific Parliament last year in this chamber with more than 50 Pacific participants. It was great to have 5 Fijians there at that gathering. Since 2005 being here, I have consistently argued privately with colleagues that it was better to engage Fiji rather than to talk to them by megaphone as Helen Clark and Phil Goff did. The Pacific Parliament could never have progressed had I not been here. There have been some interesting interactions over this 9 years. I think of a visit to Israel with colleagues, Paul Hutch down here and Phil and Jackie Dean. And during that visit, I realised the extent to which the majority of Israeli politicians were not in the slightest interest in resolving issues with Palestinians. That was a disappointing lesson to me, because I left that visit thinking that the Palestinian leadership were a bunch of people who you could do business with. Before that visit, I had not appreciated the extent of segregation being practiced in Israel towards Arabs. To Israelis, I simply ask you, have you no humanity? Finally, can I say thank you to all parliamentarians from all parties. It's been fun working with most of you, and I have made some good friends, including in other parties. Thanks also to all the staff in the parliamentary complex, and especially the library and our staff here providing water and other things. Can I just say thank you one and all. I wish you luck, and all the luck you deserve for the next election. Cheers.
I call Chris Ockenvold to make his valedictory statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much indeed for the call to give my valedictory statement. Because it's